Hi, this is Robert Kiyosaki, and you're listening to Capital Hacking. This is the most important thing you can listen to today.
Hello, this is Josh McCallan, and I'm sorry for interrupting the beginning of your favorite podcast. I know, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, you're going to have to wait a second before we get started because it's time to announce something very special. Learn and grow. Have you heard this expression on the show before? Learn and grow is a time for us as a capital hacking tribe to get together, come together within the Accountable Equity Learn and Grow Mastermind Summit hosted at Renault Winery on December 2nd and actually become a community, a mastermind. Remember Jim Rohn, the great business philosopher? He said, we will become the average of the 5 people we spend time with. And wait until you see how great the people are in that room. There's a community from all over the country that'll be flying in. We'd love to have you join us. There'll be great speakers, great content, and you could be in that room. If you haven't had a chance before, please visit the accountableequity.com site, choose Learn and Grow, and register today.
Here's the one.
I have a dream.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I could do this all day.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom.
Cinderella story out of nowhere.
It's in the hole. That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Welcome back to the big show. It's called Capital Hacking. It's your personal audio mastermind. And my name is Josh McCallan. There's another gentleman named John Edwin who recorded the best ever show we've done with David Green for the 300th episode. And guess what? I ruined the intro. Yes, I know. You can't even believe it, but I did not get the audio right on the intro. So I'm doing this intro without the illustrious John Edwin, but that's okay. He'll be on the whole show because this is a big one. David Green, to many of you, is one of the most famous podcasters in the world. He runs the Bigger Pockets podcast. He's great friends and was compadres with Brandon Turner before he left. Now David runs that podcast as the host, but he came out with a book recently that is extremely important. And I just want to take a somber moment, though this is a hilarious episode, to talk about Pillars of Wealth. And, you know, Pillars of Wealth is his newest book. It's from Bigger Pockets, David Green. I admire this gentleman beyond words. I shot him a thank you note after he finished the show yesterday because I think of all the people on the world of podcast universe, David is truly a humble guy who tries to explain things in patterns. He explains the complicated with simple analogies. He does a lot of great things to teach us all things that we didn't grow up learning, like what are the pillars of wealth? Now, this is written by a guy who built his career from lessons he learned from basketball, from working in restaurants, which touches my heart because we have so many wonderful teammates that work with us in the restaurants, and I love them all, and I'm so grateful for all of them. And I really wanted to do this show. I grabbed him after a big conference, and I said, would you mind speaking to our people through the podcast? So if you're listening to this show, Viva May team, this is really, I thought, compelling because I've always said if you work in the world of hospitality and you're in the restaurants, you're learning every skill you need to be wildly successful in life and in relationships. And he does a great job explaining that. So before we get into the show, thank you very much, John, for a great episode. You and I, you're the best. I love working with you. Sorry I ruined our audio, but at least we got the whole show. And Pillars of Wealth, grab it right now. Great book. And join us in a mastermind right now where we're going to learn how a blue-collar methodology can build wealth for this gentleman and how you can apply these skills and thought processes, a little bit of discipline, a lot of new ideas to change your future. You're going to love this episode.
Today is the day we are interviewing David Green. He is not only an amazing guy that's made such an exceptional impact upon the world, but he's also a friend of ours.
Welcome to the big show, David.
Thank you, guys. It's nice to be doing something with some fellow Go Bros.
Yes, that's true. We do talk about that a lot on this show. Thank God for Go Abundance and all the work you do. So the story of getting you on this show today starts with a powerful speech you gave at a massive conference, 2,000-3,000 people a couple weeks ago in Florida. But for those of us who don't know you yet, how do you describe yourself? Because I'm going to have so many friends and contact and colleagues who are listening to this show. They might not know you yet, David. They're the only people in America that don't know you because I know how famous you are. But how do you describe who you are so we can all get on the same page?
I tend to describe myself as a blue collar worker who just had a plan, played good defense, saved his money, invested it in real estate, and let inflation carry me to becoming a multimillionaire. I don't think I'm an incredibly talented businessman. In fact, when I look at business opportunities to this day, I'm just admitting it's probably not the smartest way, but I tend to look at the employee's position and say, how would I make that more efficient so that the employee could work better? I don't look at what are the high level profit and loss statement, the angles you could work. I really don't like getting into the complicated corporate hostile takeover type of the business perspective, as much as like, how do you provide a service to a client? How do you do it better than everybody else? And how do you outwork your competition so that every time someone leaves, they say, I'm going to come back and I'm going to work with that one. And hence I have fallen in love with capitalism. I love that capitalism acknowledges that we live in a competitive environment, that all of us, when we're choosing what to spend our money on, want the best of whatever we can get. I've said during the speech, nobody says who's got the most mediocre tacos in town, or where's the taco stand with the owner whose dream that I want to support because he's on a beach drinking Mai Tais and he's automated his process and his tacos are meh, they're okay. But what I really want to do is give him all my money so he can live his dream and I can go back to my job and work a 10-hour day. No, we want the best of what we're doing. And so by looking at life from other people's perspective, you get a cheat code into what will make you successful. If you're frustrated that your CPA doesn't understand real estate law, if you are frustrated that your bookkeeper doesn't get back to you, that your agent doesn't answer their phone, if you become that, word will start to go around that you're the person to go to. And I've noticed that recently, maybe the last 10 years or so, there's been a trend in American culture, I should say, that is becoming increasingly anti putting in the work. We glorify the person that has created an automated system of delegation where they have passive income and they don't have to try hard anymore. And we ascribe to get to that point. Everyone that starts a business says, I want to get to where I'm not doing anything. Okay. But then when we experience that on a phone tree, wanting to talk to a representative, screaming representative into a phone line, and then you get someone in the Philippines finally that answers, who doesn't know any of the answers to your questions, and you're driving. No one is like, yes, that was wonderful. I'm so glad that somebody delegated this. And there's a big gap between what employers need and what employees want to do, between what the market wants and what the business owners are willing to provide. And so I wrote this book to try to help bridge that gap.
Yeah, wait a second. Hold on. Josh, people talk about 0 to 60. We went 0 to 100 in about less than a second. David, that's why we love you. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience as a waiter in a oh, okay.
Do you mind me interrupting for one second? So for those listening, David Green, he was super understated how good of the work he's done. He's one of the most trusted podcasters in the world. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands usually per episode, millions of downloads and listeners on the Bigger Pocket podcast. When he teamed up with the guy Brendan Turner over the years, they made a dynamic duo. But in general, the two of them have gone on to do many things. But you're not just a regular guy to get on this show. You are really one of the premier thought leaders in the world on real estate. You teach it. You're very practical. There's a gift you have where you break the complex into things all of us can really understand. And I'm excited about this. I'm glad you want to do that, John. I do too. But the book we're here to talk about today, folks, is called Pillars of Wealth. But I thought I heard it really well. You said you describe yourself as a blue collar worker that has worked on basically you've tried to work on yourself. And yeah, I was going to ask you why you wrote it. So you already answered the question. And, you and I talked about this. I geek out about how much you teach the restaurant teams. Yeah. So I'm going to leave this on a silver platter for you to take all those comments, those pleasantries. Why was the restaurant experience in your life pivotal to a lot of what you taught in this book?
I don't think there's anything magical about a restaurant. I think that you can take any job you get and you can make it magical. And this is not rah-rah, woo-ha types. I mean, it's the opposite of that. I started my really entrepreneurial journey playing basketball in high school, and I learned lessons doing that built a framework that I look at the world through. I understood teamwork. When I do something in a basketball court, especially basketball, I love it. It's such a beautiful game because there's only 5 people on the court. You're both playing offense and defense. And it's like a chessboard that is always moving. It's not static, one move after the next. Baseball is sort of like you wait, they hit you the ball, you either field it or you don't, and then you wait, right? You're batting or you're not batting, but there's nothing you're doing playing baseball when you're not up to bat that can help the guy who's batting. Basketball is different. Josh has the ball. I can go set a screen for him. I can cut to the rim, which forces the defense to pay attention to me and turn their head. Might give him an advantage getting past his guy. He gets halfway past his guy. That means a defender has to slide over to help. That person is now open to get the ball. So you're always thinking about, I am a part of a bigger puzzle. And how do I fit into that? And how do my actions make other people's jobs easier? And you also see in basketball that your actions can make other people's job hard. I was a really good defender. I worked very hard on defense. I usually guarded the other team's best player, which was nerve-wracking. So you're trying to do everything you can to stop this really good athlete from being able to get the ball where they want it or build momentum. Usually they're bigger and stronger and faster than me. So my goal was just don't even let them get the ball where they want it. Once they've got it, you're not going to stop them. And then you watch a scrub on the other team miss a shot and one of your teammates doesn't box out and their guy gets a rebound and just puts it in. And they get the same 2 points that they would have got if the guy that I'm trying to stop had got him. And I just saw like none of us exist independent of anyone else. We are all created, whether you look at it religiously, like from a God perspective, where it's funny how most of us, the needs we have as human beings can only be met through another person. Like when you're married, you are very dependent on your spouse to meet your needs. And in fact, I almost think we get the opposite advice a lot of the time where we're told you can't depend on somebody else for your needs. You have to be happy on your own. And there's an element of truth to that. But there's just as much an element of truth of when there's 2 people in a relationship and one's doing a really good job of serving and the other one's not, the one who's being served is usually happy. The one who's not being served is unhappy, but you can't make them serve you. Just like there's a dependency with the way human beings operate. And you see it in sports and you see it in business. It's a theme that I just see run all throughout the world. So I learned in basketball, if I work hard, I can get better. I can affect the game without having the ball in my hand. You see the selfish people that only want to try hard if they're going to get points and look good. And you see the people that really just want to win that maybe aren't noticed by anyone that doesn't really know basketball. And I tended to see, like, I look at God like the person who really knows basketball. He sees the people that are putting in the work that are affecting the game that maybe aren't getting the credit for it, but he sees that, right? So I've always strived to tell people that if you're assuming that wealth and success and all good things come from God, I look at him like he's the coach. He decides who gets the playing time. He decides who he calls the plays for, right? Like you'd want to do what the coach wants you to do if he's the one that's ultimately in control. If we think that we are in control, well, then you get this feeling like, well, I can hack the system. I don't have to run hard. I don't have to play defense. I don't have to set screens, right? I just need the box score to show that this is my millionaire status. This is my net worth. This is my passive income. These are my rebounds. These are my points. That they play the game for the stats, not to actually win it. Okay. So in the restaurant business, I mean, just to be candid, when I got out of high school, I had a terrible senior year. I was, when I was a sophomore, I was asked to play varsity. So I was really good. And my coach loved me. And we had a new coach come in my senior year. His dad was the head coach at University of the Pacific in Stockton. They have a really good basketball program at that time. I mean, they were like in the NCAA tournament and knocking off top teams. They had just drafted their player was Michael Olowokandi, who was the #1 pick in the entire NBA draft, like my junior year, sophomore year. So they had a really good program. And this guy had played there and his dad was the coach there. So he came in and he ran our high school program like a Division I college program. He just didn't like me as a player. He liked me as a person. I was like a tall guard and he liked small, fast guards and big, powerful, big guys. And I was this like right in the middle. And in his system, there really wasn't anywhere for me. And it was a very painful year. It was just like, that was my identity. That was all that I ever wanted was a good basketball player. And it was crushing leaving it. So what happened is I took all of that frustration that I didn't have the career in basketball I wanted. I didn't get to go play in college. I ended up sitting the bench for pretty much all my senior year, even though I was playing every year before that with the older kids. And I just went into the restaurant business, which is where my job was. And I poured all that passion into that. I looked at the team of servers like that was my basketball team. And I had the attitude of like, okay, it's not my table. I'm not getting tipped by it. But if I fill up their water, if I bust their plates, if I'm productive every minute of the day when I'm working in the restaurant, the team will win. And I kind of just left the rest up to God's hands, right? And what happened is the owner of the restaurant, which in this little microcosm, they sort of function as the coach, or in this example, God, saw that every time my tables were taken care of, I was helping everybody else's tables. They saw that I was asking tons of questions. How do I get better at this? Right? How does it, when we order a steak, medium rare, medium, what is the chef looking at? I know what it means to us. My job is to ask the question, rare, medium, medium well, or well. But I wanted to know, if a guest asked me, well, which one should I pick? How would I even articulate that so that they would know what to do, right? And my boss would see me explaining to the person, well, does blood scare you? Do you like that juice? You don't? Okay, well, then you don't want to go anything less than a medium well. But if you do that, it's not going to taste the same, and here's why. So I'd recommend this peppercorn sauce that we have, or this borderlay sauce, right? It's small little things, but to the guest, they don't feel stupid anymore, right? Because they were like at a steakhouse and they don't know how they're supposed to order their steak or whatever. Or if somebody would order ketchup with the steak, which does happen, right? I just bring them another couple sauces that weren't ketchup so that the rest of the table might not laugh at them because you're at a steakhouse ordering ketchup, right? So long story short, the boss starts to see that. She's noticing this, and every other server in that restaurant keeps saying what a great teammate I am. We love David. We love David. I had this idea, like, just like I wanted to play the perfect game in basketball, I wanted to have the perfect shift at the restaurant. That was the little area that God had given me. It's not what I wanted. I wanted to be a basketball player. I was a waiter, and I was going to college, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was incredibly stressed out and anxious about what's the career field for me. I just wanted to pick something and run after it. And I didn't have any direction. So I just did the best I could with what I had. Well, eventually, when every single staff member is telling your boss that they love you, and the cooks are telling the boss that they love you, I would go get them drinks at the end of the night. I would find something from the bar. Maybe there was like leftover hors d'oeuvres that our big party didn't eat. I'd bring it back and give it to the guys that were cooking in the back. Just like, we were going to throw it away, so why not give it to them? I would walk the ladies out to their cars at night, because you're getting off shift at a restaurant anywhere between 10 and 1 in the morning. It's a dark parking lot. I'd walk them out to their cars and then literally run back in and be like, okay, where am I at with my tables? Did food come out? Do I need to be bussing something? Do I need to be preparing soup? And that hustle, it stands out, especially when no one else is doing it. Okay. This is what I'm getting at. The majority of us look at our position in a W-2 job and say, this sucks. I want to be the CEO. I want to be the owner. I want to make the good money. I want the best section. I want the best nights. I don't want to work hard. And we think of it from our perspective. But the boss who actually controls who gets what tables and who works what shifts, and if you get to close that night or if you're going home early, like, they control the means to the wealth. They're not sitting in an ivory tower of greed like we talk about those people, just sitting there like, Scrooge McDuck diving into their big bin of money. They're actually carrying the weight of the world. They're dealing with the stress nobody wants to deal with. They're dealing with the people who called in sick and they got to cover the shift, and the cook who's messing up on this stuff, and the orders that never arrived, and the person that was supposed to clean the bathrooms that didn't do it. Like, in my little world, I think that waiting the table is the whole job. I don't realize everything they're doing. So when they see that there's a person here who's taken on more responsibility, who's making my life easier, they naturally want to give more responsibility to that person. Just like the coach gives minutes to the player that's setting the screens and moving the ball and getting the rebounds and helping their teammates know who they're supposed to be guarding. Business owners think that same way. So I found myself in the position where I was getting the best sections on the best nights. When the party of 25 came in, it was going to me instead of someone else, even though other people had worked in the restaurant longer than me. And I even got promoted over some of the guys that had been busboys longer than me just because of the work ethic. So I got this really good lesson early in life that outworking your competition will get you noticed by the coach, and the coach usually controls the minutes.
Guy, Josh, listen, there's a reason that David Green is who he is, because here's the thing. And I want to give you some gratitude, because you've been on thousands and thousands of podcasts, and probably to you, when you get asked to be on a podcast, you may or may not roll your eyes. I don't know. But what I do know is that you coming on the show, and at the pace you were just speaking, with the depth that you were giving us and our listeners, you came to play. You're a gritty guy, and that foot is not off the accelerator. So thank you.
Thank you, buddy. So much to talk about here for a moment. And, after we're finished going through some of these great stories, we'll talk about what are the pillars of wealth and why are you qualified to teach them in a sense. But I think you've already laid that foundation. My son, this is unbelievably uncanny. He's in his 20, sends me this picture a second ago. Not that you can see it, but I'll read it to you. And he asks John and I, guess who wrote this? Labor is the universal law of our being. Nature does not give us any finished product. Man must eat his bread in the sweat of his brow, or not at all. Idleness should be untrothed, and industry crowned in her stead. This was written almost 200 years ago, so it's a little hard for me to read, but it was Andrew Carnegie, and he was 13 years old working as a mail boy for so here he is just saying work is dignified is basically what he's saying. He goes on to say later that the prince who sits idle should not be as respected as the man who works and is a citizen, or, and of course, man meaning woman or man. But honestly, super grateful the way you bring that heat, David, because in our life, with the blessing of having good number of teammates, we talk about the dignity of each person. We're not blowing smoke. We totally respect every teammate. We know it doesn't work without each other, and we ask them to feel their dignity. And I mean, I just ask them to reflect. We meet each week, thank God, to talk about why we do what we do. And I say, we do it because we have as much dignity as the guest. We're the ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And I want you to be thanked. So we thank them each week. I mean, we're not perfect. We do a lot of mistakes, and then we ask them to thank each other. There's like a moment we call moments of ministry where they're good to each other. And then, but one of our favorite things is I do say to them once in a while, I say, do you know that working in direct service, which is what hospitality is, like we get to actually serve something to someone, like it's very tangible, is you become a gift giver, and you can be a gift giver of goodness too, of like love, basically. And then I say to them, plus the skills you're building here are the fundamental skills that you will need, whether it be systematic operations or sales or persuasion. And I want them to just hear a guy like you who has built from zero to an empire of real estate, to being one of the world's best business book sellers, with more copies sold of all your different books. They can too. And I want us all to hear that. We can too if we work on us. And then, of course, the last stuff you talk about where it's like, why do we want to not work? Isn't work great? You know what I mean? I find it great to be of service to others, but, look, I'm hardwired that way. Hopefully we try to hire. So that being said, thank you. And thank you for doing what we agree. It's dignifying to work hard. You're not stupid.
One of the things that I pulled out of the book, David, is it's a blue-collared blueprint on how to build wealth, right? And then you talk about the concept of defense and how to overcome debt and expenses. Can you expand on that some, please?
Yeah, that's huge. And I'm basically, the book was written as an antidote to all the people that came to me with toxic ideas in their head about how money's supposed to work. So some people have the idea that passive income, completely passive income, is the way to go. So they had this idea that they were just going to work really hard, buy a couple properties, and then never work again. And I had that same idea. I lived years of my life thinking that was a possibility. And then all that stuff falls apart. And what happens is you just assume there's a problem with me. I suck at passive income. I'm a terrible investor. I do everything wrong, because the minute I took when I took my hands off the wheel for a long time, the car ran itself off the road. Right? Well, that happens to everyone that does that. And I had a light bulb moment where I was just really frustrated with the fact that my portfolio was always needing my attention. And I just thought, health doesn't work that way. I can't get in really good shape and be like, I'm done. Now I'm just buff forever and I'll never get fat again. I can't put a lot of effort into a friendship and then stop pouring into that person and we'll just have a great relationship. You guys are both married. You can't do that with your wife. You can't be like, yeah, I won her over. We're married. Now I'm done.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I look at, marriage and everything in life. There's never a stopping. It's always this. Yeah. You're either going up or going down.
Right. And there's always work that you're putting into it. But do you hate the work of loving your spouse? Probably not. Kids are a lot of work. I've never heard a parent that's like, if I could, I'd just go back and not have these kids. Just doesn't happen, right? Like, where did we get the idea that work equals bad? Like, writing music is work, but if you're a musician that loves doing it, or playing music is work, going to the gym every day is work. But when you're like seeing results and you're feeling strong, you leave the gym feeling really good about what you did. I don't know where that toxic idea that work equals bad and the better ways to get passive income came from. But I want to write a book that just explained to people, let go of that idea. And the same is true of where you spend your money. I operate from a little different premise than other people, because I do come from a place of faith where I believe if you're not being a good steward of what you have now, God, if he is good, cannot give you more. Okay. If you each had a reckless 16-year-old that was a terrible decision maker and very impulsive, you would not give him the keys to a Ferrari. It's not that you don't love them. That would be stupid. It would be not in their best interest to let them have a Ferrari at 16. Okay. And I think a lot of the time, if you look at God, or if you look at the universe, however you want to put it, you want that six-pack so bad. But if you had that six-pack, would you be arrogant? Would that actually lead to infidelity? Would it lead to taking your attention off of your mission? Because now you're putting it on, I want attention on myself. Because if that's the case, you really can't, that can't come from God if he's good. Well, wealth is like that. We all want it. Everyone craves it, just like we all crave a six-pack. But do I think about the fact that if I was ripped and super handsome, that might be bad for me? I might not be able to handle the weight of all that attention. I mean, it's like no one really thinks about if it should happen or not. But you guys are both relatively stable. Have you seen people that just like started getting on human growth hormone or something, and like their body changed, and the next thing you know, they're not happy with their wife that they were happy with?
A lot.
And they're out there, right? And they don't end up looking better. You're not like, wow, that guy really came up. You're just like, what happened to them? They're a mess. It's not good. Well, wealth is the same, but it's easier to transfer hands. Like, it's easier to accumulate wealth because you could take it from other people. Defense to me is all about being a good steward. Where are you putting your money? If you worked really hard to make it, are you saving it? Do you work just as hard to protect what you have as you did to accumulate it in the first place? Because if you're not, if you're just making it to spend it, what's the benefit of you getting it over somebody else? And in a practical sense, because not everybody's going to be a person of faith, if you're not saving and protecting your money, you probably don't respect it, which means you probably didn't have to work really hard to get it. And easy come, easy go is a thing, right? Like, there's a lot of people that made a lot of money in the crypto space recently, and it left just as fast. They weren't protecting that money. You didn't see a lot of people that made $2 million in Ethereum or something and said, oh my God, I didn't deserve that. What grace, I'm going to save 100% of it and drive my Toyota Corolla. No, those are the first people to go buy themselves a new Maserati because they got the money easy, so they spent it really easy, right? And my opinion is that if you want to be wealthy, you first have to learn how to bring value to the market. And you are not going to bring the value to the market if you don't even value your own resources. If you can't save the money that you've been given, why would you bust your butt to protect somebody else's expense when they go to the restaurant and they want to have a great experience, right? Or whatever it is you're doing to provide service to somebody else. You're not going to care about them having a great experience if you don't even value your own, if you just think money's a right and you're just supposed to have it. So the first part of the book is all about practical ways that you can focus on saving money. And most of it comes down to budgeting, as well as being aware that you do not live in an egalitarian fairyland where everybody likes everybody. Okay. There is a veneer of that in the world because advertising and marketing works by making you feel like you're a part of something you're not. Think about every beer commercial you've ever seen. It's always like a bunch of people dancing on a beach. Okay. None of them are trying to roofie the girls. None of them are stealing things out of other people's purses when they're not looking. None of them are like, okay, I want to cheat with my buddy's girl when he's not looking. Can I get him passed out drunk and can I get her drunk? But like, that's what's happening in the real world when you're partying with a bunch of people you don't know. They're not all like, man, I'd take a bullet for this stranger. They're just thinking how they take advantage of you. But beer commercials don't portray that. They make it look like it's a safe thing. Like if you look at every single commercial you see, it's never what we see in the world. You are being targeted and taken advantage of as people are purposely trying to get you to give up the money that you worked for. And opening people's eyes to that, to me, is the first step in preparing the stage that someone can actually bear the weight of wealth when it comes.
I love it. That is so deep. And I love that you talked about being a good steward of your money and your talents. And it's really wild because this morning I started filling out there's a there's something called 90 in EOS, and the first thing it has you write in is your purpose. And I wrote in there that my purpose is to be God's light and to be a good steward of the talents that God has given to me. And that's really what we are, right? We're stewards. We're not keepers. We can't keep any of it. And it's beautiful that the three of us are men of faith. I love that concept of defense. And then you went on and talked about offense. So can you share some of those offensive nuggets with us?
Yeah, like so many people, when I talked about the antidote to the book is the people that come with the wrong idea. The heart of the person that would ask me, how do I get wealth, was usually something like, hey, David, I got no job, no savings, no credit, no income, no skills, no girlfriend, and no responsibilities. How do I buy real estate? What's the best way to do it? And you just hear this like, okay, that's the 15-year-old that says, I make terrible decisions. I have no impulse control. I have terrible friends. What's the best Ferrari for me to own? And what you almost want to do is like, dude, you're the last person that should have real estate. You shouldn't own real estate. You shouldn't have the keys to a Ferrari right now. Like you could barely handle a bicycle. We should start with that before we get into this. Offense is not something that you just like. I think people that don't have wealth look at it like some people have it and they don't. It's either fair or it's unfair. Some people are born into wealth and some people aren't born into wealth. Okay. Like that's the perspective of people that don't have it. Obviously there are some people that are born into wealth, but we know a lot of people who are wealthy, who raise kids that didn't have adversity in their life, and their kids don't handle wealth and they lose it all. That's more a familiar pattern that when you're born into wealth, you don't maintain it, you lose it. Okay. There's other families that are wealthy because they practice certain principles and they pass those principles on to their kids. Is it unfair that some kids will be born into that family? Sure. It depends on how you define unfair. But why wouldn't you want to put yourself in the category of I have the unfair advantage? I'm going to teach my kids those same principles. Instead, we demonize people that are rich and we just assume that because they're a certain gender or race or live in a certain area or a certain creed, religion, that's why they're wealthy. No, when you meet wealthy people, you start to see that there are tendencies that they all have. Okay. And it's not different than fit people. There are people that are born into a family that eats protein and vegetables, and they don't have very many processed foods. And if they do eat bad food, it's known this is a treat. This is very unhealthy. We don't do this a lot. Then there are other people who are born eating fast food every day and microwave pizzas and Hot Pockets, and they think that's normal eating. They're being raised to be unhealthy, basically. Like they're learning the principles of it. When it's fitness, for some reason, we're okay accepting that principles matter. But when it comes to money, there's this just anger. Like, I don't want to believe that there are principles that lead to being wealthy. So in this book, there's 6 chapters that focus on in the second pillar, which is offense, things that wealthy people do and ways you can start developing yourself to be able to be more wealthy. It's like, have you guys read Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink's book? Wonderful book, right? One of the chapters is on leadership. And I basically define leadership as the person that willingly takes on responsibility. So your crappy employees, the people that suck, the people that are always poor, have a subconscious effort of saying, that is not my responsibility. Someone else has to do it, right? There was a guy at one of the restaurants I worked at. His parents were friends with the owners, which is why he had the job, right? And he was known for saying, no, sirree, Bob, that ain't my job. Whoa, so if you said like, hey man, can you drop me off some bread at table 4? Can you fill up the waters on 13? Can you help me bust whatever? He's like, I'm a food runner. I don't do that. And you have to pay me if you want me to. Okay. Like he thought he was negotiating for himself, that he was a good businessman, but he was the worst person. He was at the bottom of the totem pole. He ended up just losing his job because nobody liked him there. Right. That is the opposite of leadership. Leadership says, where can I take on responsibility? Where can I learn new things? And you don't even ask at first if you can be paid for it. You don't deserve to be paid for something till you can do it as good or better than the person that's currently doing it. You ask for the opportunity because it will develop you as a person, which will eventually translate into you getting a better job. So like, this is what I wish everyone understood about how to make it in capitalism. You can start off as a food runner, outwork all the other food runners, get promoted to busboy, outperform the other busboys. Then at some point, a waiter's going to get pregnant, or they're going to quit, or they're going to move, and there's an opening. Rather than hiring a waiter you don't know, you'd rather hire internally as a business owner. Who's my best busboy? Oh, they've been studying the menu every day. They've been helping take orders for the waiters when the waiters get busy that's an easy person to learn how to train to be a waiter. They already know how to use the point of sale system because they've been taken on responsibility. They get hired. Then you're the top waiter. Why not ask to be a manager? Hey, train me to be a backup manager in case they come in sick. Show me what our policy is on comping food, or I want to listen to the way the manager deals with the guest that's unhappy. I want to go read books that talk about like never split the difference. Or one of my favorites is a book called Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff that just describes frame control and how to control conversation so that the other person understands your point. Nothing stops the person who's just waiting tables from learning this stuff. But if you did that, and then you eventually took over the bookkeeping for the restaurant, you took over the ordering of the supplies, you're getting a free education in how to run a restaurant. And then if you decide you want to open your own, because you do want that money you talk about, you know what to do. Now compare that to the person that's done none of that and is like, if they're not going to pay me more, I'm not going to work harder. And then they decide they want to open their restaurant to make the money of the boss. They're woefully unprepared. They're going to fail. Right? You don't want to wait until the Olympics to start training for the Olympics. You want to be doing it all the time. And what I'm saying, it's going to turn off a lot of your audience. It's going to turn off a lot of people that hear this because it's the opposite of what everyone on TikTok is telling them, which is like, are you tired of working for the man? Are you tired of slaving away for a boss and you don't actually get anywhere? What I'm saying to them sounds unhealthy. But like to the customer, they don't care what your goals are. They care what their goals are. And learning how to like meet the needs of other people is literally what develops you so that you can bear the weight of making more money yourself.
Yeah, David. Wow. You kind of walked into a really, I mean, you're taking you're really blazing a trail right now. This is super not normal thought processes, for modern momentum. Yeah. They're counterculture. Thank you. I couldn't find anything. They are the principles that predate the current movements in society. These are not the first time I've heard these principles, but it's amazing how powerful you're teaching them in today's world. And I think you're using great examples. I love it. You're so tactical. You're like, well, that woman might get pregnant. You can just kind of step into her position. Boy, I have a few. I would say on top of the book, Pitch Anything, which I have never read. You have used the expression, put yourself in the other person's perspective or think of what the other person wants like 3 times.
Yes.
You know, the best book to share with others, if you don't already, is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends.
Oh yeah. How to Win Friends and Influence People.
How to Win Friends and Influence People. I find that to be the most suggested read I get from those who have built their own wealth, like a generation older than us or two. And I always wondered, why did I hear that book so much growing up? I don't hear it so much with our peers, but it's because it's the fundamental element. What does the other need? How do I listen to find what the other needs? How do I generally add that value? And then they will be influenced by me. It's not a trick.
And as people of faith, it's easy for us to agree that's the better way. But there's some people that aren't people of faith, which is why I just like to remind them. You choose to where to give your money to. You choose the agent you pick, the loan officer you pick, the title company you pick based on who serves you best. That's where your dollars go. And when one business serves other people, like they make the best tacos in town, everyone goes there. They get a disproportionate amount of the business, right? This is actually practical advice. It's not just spiritual, faith-based. Well, do your best and hope that it works out. It's how the world works. We all think about the women that have more opportunities to marry than the women that don't. They're going to be the most beautiful. The ones that take the best care of themselves, that are the most feminine, that are the most nurturing, that are the most kind, that are the most giving. Every guy's going to want to marry those girls. Okay. Now compare that to the girl that's really attractive and instead she's on OnlyFans or on Instagram manipulating men to try to get money from them, but she doesn't love them. No one's marrying that girl. Okay. The same thing with men. You're having a hard time dating. We get this, I'm passionate about it because I've seen my whole life. There's this idea of entitlement that if you just exist, there's someone out there, that one person for you who's going to love you exactly as you are. And it's one of the most toxic things you can ever be told. It's incredibly entitled. That's not the way it works. No woman is out there saying, I want to find a guy that's incredibly unimpressive, unreliable, boring, not masculine, not helpful, not good at loving. And I want to give myself to him because my life's mission is to be his one person. Not one woman is going to think that. Okay. But yet we're still sitting here like, well, somebody else might love that person. The way better advice is to say, here's what women want. This is what makes women happy in a relationship. This is what keeps your relationship healthy. How do you become that? which then gives you the option of having many women that you could marry, and then you pick the one that you think's the best fit for you. That same principle, if we could get back to that, would lead to marriage not falling apart. It also works within business. How do I become the taco shop everyone wants to come to? You guys remember the Soup Nazi episode in Seinfeld?
Yeah.
Okay. Great example. The guy's a complete jerk. He could tell everyone no when they get in his line. Like, you ask him a question, he's like, nope, this soup or that soup. And one thing you don't like, no soup for you. You're out of there, right? Only because he's got the best soup in town that he can afford to be that picky. You can have the best jobs. You can make the most money. You can take the best opportunities. You can get into the upper rooms of people that are wealthy when you have what everybody wants. Right. But for some reason, we stopped giving people that advice that you need to become what the market would want. And instead, we started to tell them that you are owed this. And then that bleeds into politics. We start voting for politicians that say this is a human right, that you're owed this thing. It's not fair that someone has it and you don't. So the government's going to provide it. Well, that takes away the incentive that I would have had to become that. Can you imagine if like women were forced to sleep with guys that were losers because it wasn't fair? That like the ripped, smart, and funny guys get all the girls, and like women were being forced to have sex with people that they didn't want to because it was unfair. That's what we've done with our financial system. In a sense, it's the same thing, right? And like you never get the same quality of a relationship with someone that was forced to be there than someone that chose to be there. And you'll find the same thing with wealth. Can the government meet these things for you? Yeah. Is your experience with healthcare going to be the same as if you chose the doctor that you wanted and the doctor chose the client that they wanted and they chose the things that would make them the most money? What you end up getting is the DMV or the public library. Like, nobody ever has a good experience when you're forced to provide something. You get a way better experience when somebody chooses to. And another one of the chapters in the second pillar is the pursuit of excellence. I call it falling in love with the process of becoming great. All of us have to ask ourselves, like, what is it that I would love to be great at? And how do I fall in love with the process of that? Because then that 4-letter word work isn't a negative thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely fantastic. One of the things I want to go back just a little bit, that you do so well at, David, and Josh, you do well at, and I do my best to do well at, is being a servant leader, because the world's greatest leaders who've ever existed are servant leaders. And, you know, when you were just talking about marriage, David, one of the things that I try and be intentional with, not always perfect, definitely not, but I think about things that Christine likes. Like, what does Christine like me to do? What really puts a smile on her face? And there's stupid little things that I may just do around the house, and that's just a little signature, like telling her I love her. You know, without saying it. And I do say it too, but another, hey, if you're a husband, here's chore play is foreplay. And that's what it leads to. Chore play leads to foreplay. And lastly, last marital thing real quick, I'll give you to be a servant leader is in the morning, ask your wife how you can make her day easier. What can I do today for you to make your day easier? And that has gone a long way in our marriage. And that really keeps us close. Now, you give some investing advice in this book, having to do a lot with real estate. What asset classes do you recommend right now in this economy to get involved in?
This is the hardest economy I've ever seen for investing. And really, I love that you asked that question, because that's another reason I wrote the book. There are some people that are good at the first pillar. They save money. These are the people that make their own soap, stitch their own clothes, eat one packet of oatmeal for the entire day. Okay. Like, they're good at defense, but they're not good at offense, and they're not good at investing. And I tend to focus, instead of just telling people, here's what you need to do. I never like that approach because it's very narcissistic. Like, it's easy for me to go tell one of you guys, here's what you need to do. Right. But that, if you probably already knew that. And if you're not doing it, it's not because you didn't know you were supposed to stop eating sugar and carbs. Nobody's arguing alcohol is healthy for them. When they're drinking, it's because they have an issue going on in their life. Okay. So it makes me feel good if I just tell you should drink less, but that's not love. Love would be like, well, what's going on in your life that's leading you to drink? And am I willing to get down there with you in the mud and help solve that problem? And then you just don't need to drink. Very few people actually want to do that, right? So what stops people from saving money, the first pillar, is usually that they're undisciplined people. It's a very simple one. You just have to be disciplined, and it freaking sucks. It's if you're looking at a fitness analogy, defense is diet. Like, this is the one that I've struggled with my fitness. I don't mind going to the gym and lifting weights. I don't mind running. I can stomach exercising. I freaking hate just having to eat like no carbs and no sugar. And you got to plan ahead. And that's always where I get in trouble. I get really hungry. There's no time to go make food. I go eat something that's right there. And I struggle, right? The next pillar is offense. The reason people don't follow that one is because of it requires personal development, and they're not willing to pay the price of having the humility of saying, I'm not enough as I am today, and you're going to be rejected. There's no way around it. If you are doing your best, you are failing. Okay. And this is okay to admit it. The example I give people, like John is clearly a weightlifter. If he does the best workout he can, and he lifts that weight as hard as he can every time he goes, he didn't do a proper workout until he cannot do another rep. Okay. If he's trying to lift 250 pounds 10 times and he gets to 10, he should do 11. If he could do 11, he should do 12. And halfway to 12, he doesn't get it. That's how he knows that he hit what he should be doing in his workout. Okay. He literally got to the point that John was not good enough. And you got to be humble enough to admit it, but that makes sense when you're working out. Are we going to work every day with that same attitude? That I'm going to take on as much as I used to test myself. How many tables can I wait? Right? How many sales can I make? How high can I push my average like price per client in the restaurant until I hit a ceiling? And then when I hit the ceiling, I looked at people that were doing better and said, what are they doing that I'm not doing? I just sort of understood personal development, because as an athlete, your coach is always telling you, yeah, your left hand's not good enough. You don't move your feet fast enough. You don't block shots well enough. I can't play you. So I was comfortable. A lot of people, guys, are not okay to admit I'm not enough as I am. It's a big problem. And I think relationships, that's where a lot of fights come from, because when you're in a marriage, ultimately, or not ultimately, but inevitably, that spouse is not meeting your needs, and it becomes aware, and then they usually get defensive. Well, if you could get rid of the defensiveness and just say, well, what needs to change about me? Your relationship wouldn't be hard, right? So the second pillar is all about personal development and understanding that you need to be growing every day, which means you have to be comfortable with rejection and not being enough. The third pillar, investing, is where most people that are good at offense and defense need to be told that's not enough. You need to go invest your money. And I'm hoping this book makes its way into the hands of non-real estate investors who are really good at saving money, or they're really good at making money, and no one's ever told them that you need to invest the difference and let it grow. The book opens talking about how inflation is this carbon monoxide that is killing people's ability to become wealthy, and they don't realize it. And how money is actually a store of energy that is bleeding energy all the time. You have to put that energy into something that will hold its value. Okay. But for those of us that already get real estate investing, we've got the opposite problem. We've got this belief that I should become super wealthy by just buying a bunch of real estate and waiting. But that's not true. You also have to be good at defense, and you really should be good at offense as well, especially as we start to see the economy going into a recession. There's less people that are visiting short-term rentals or visiting hotels or visiting resorts, right? Like, your revenue is going to go down on those investments. Do you have something else in place that can make up for that? Or did you stop doing that because you fell out of love with the process of becoming great? So you stop focusing on your offensive pillar. Like, you asked me about investing opportunities right now. There aren't any that jump out at me like this is the way to go. It is really hard. You're basically trying to find the cleanest shirt in the dirty laundry right now. Nothing looks great. You're just like, what stinks the least? Okay. Which is why I'm telling people, like, if you can't get the returns you got in real estate, focus your energy on saving your money and making more money, and wait until the market turns around where there's more investing opportunities that are going to jump out at you.
Dude, I love the analogy of, offense is the personal development. You learn that in sports a lot. Diet is the saving. What was the analogy of investing again?
Yeah, there isn't like a in the fitness world, defense would be diet, offense would be working out. Maybe investing could be like supplements or rest,
okay.
I suppose, right?
Okay.
Like you need that to make the other ones work. But the analogy kind of falls apart because it's not exactly like wealth building. But in wealth building, I really like to look at what you're doing is you're not making money. And here's why, Josh. It is incredibly misleading to know when you earn $100 what that really means. Because like when I was making money in restaurants and I was saving $24,000 a year, which was saving $500 a week, which is just offense and defense, right? That did not mean the same as what it would be like right now. Inflation has made money worth way less. I mean, that was really the equivalent back then of saving like probably $48,000 a year. So what happens is you start to think that you're wealthier than you are because inflation happens silently and you don't realize that your money's becoming worth less. The best picture that I can paint is that you go trade, say, 8 hours of labor for $20 an hour, because that's what you're worth. That's $160 that you get in return for your labor. Energy you put out, and then they give you energy back, and you store that energy in a savings account with $160. But money is more than just a store of energy. It's also a unit of account. We refer to what things cost by money. When you say, David, how much does that laptop cost? I don't say about 48 cartons of eggs and 2 months of electricity bills. All right, I give it to you in dollars. I tell you what it's worth in dollars, which means that we can be misled as those dollars are losing value, but we're still using them as the same unit of account. It's very hard to peg how much energy you actually have. So the investing pillar is so important because you have to put that energy in a place where it will hold its value or it will grow in value, as opposed to savings where it's just going to die, or even worse, spending it on consumer items that somebody took your money away from you. So you essentially traded 8 hours of your labor for a new pair of shoes that are worth nothing once you've worn them. Nobody really wants to buy somebody else's shoes. And every time you wear them, lose utility so that you have to buy new ones.
Wow. I really hope people listen to this and maybe slow it down. I mean, the thing I want to drill in one more minute on, I thought this whole idea about investing is because the energy is dissipating and you're fighting inflation. I thought that was really interesting, by the way. Now, talk about money as energy. You know where I first heard that said, and I'm not sure if he created it, I'm sure he didn't, was David Osborne. We had him on the show, and he started talking about
Dave talk about that.
He does. He also talks about it as energy. Actually, yeah, I think it was on our show or other shows. I've heard him. But I also, when we created the show name, Capital Hacking, I was taking it after Tim Ferriss as kind of the model where we were going with this. And it wasn't meant to be shortcuts. It was meant to be seen through the code of how capital gets formed. But one of the words, capital, I kind of stuck on me. And this is my question to you about wealth. The word wealth and the word capital sometimes are, they're standoffish words. They're words that the normal hardworking person feels are beyond their ability to have. Wealth, even wealth, I do not like to say the word wealth because I find it out there, too far away, maybe unattainable. I don't know why I have an aversion. Perhaps you thought this through when you named it. Same thing with us with the word capital. I remember thinking, I did a whole etymology of that word, and I said, oh, capital actually means power and energy. And you need human energy and power, and you need financial energy and power to create a new project.
I like that.
And I was like, that's what we meant,
Yeah.
you and I. And the hacking part was we meant who has a pattern and a code like Matrix, and how can you learn from those patterns and codes? But go back to your naming of this book. I would say the audience of this book is the team that I get to work with every day. It's me. I need to read this book. I need to be more disciplined in my defense. And I also need to be thinking about offense as working till the end of, what did you call it? The end of your 10th rep. And if you can do another one,
Yeah.
What did you call it? I mean, fatigue. I need to be working to fatigue. So were you concerned about the title? Because your audience the person who reads this book and really can benefit may have never thought they could ever be wealthy. You're just trying to help them.
You know, it's funny. When I first joined GoBundance, wealth was like the new way of referring to it. We were just coming out of the rich era. So like Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill's book, that wasn't considered bad. But what happens is words, meanings change over time. And you also sort of notice that there's like a political movement where if you can control speech, you can sort of control thought. So I don't want to go too far down this road. I love talking about stuff that's not real estate because it always ends up applying to real estate, right? But like dating podcasts are very popular right now. Intersexual dynamics, the difference between men and women. And one of the things that drives me nuts is when people try to ascribe everything humans ever do to evolutionary psychology. They'll just be like, well, you know, the reason the guys are always cheating on their girls is because they're evolutionarily disposed to spread their seed, and the guys that didn't spread their seed died off. So only the whores that are running around here having sex with all these girls, they're the only ones that made it. So like you just can't really help it, right? And I hate that because you can really ascribe everything in life to evolutionary psychology. Like, why do I interrupt you all the time? Well, because the people that didn't interrupt didn't get their needs met and they died off, right? Like every vice you could ever have as a person can be attributed to that. But you'll hear, in order to justify it, they'll start coming up with all of these labels for ways of dating that involve you having some kind of open relationship. So there's like misandry and the poly one. I can't think of it, but like they use these big multi-syllable words to say this is what it's like when the guy is faithful but the girl's not, or the girl's faithful but the guy's not, or the guy's unfaithful but only if his girl knows about it. And they create all these classifications. What happens is you start thinking in your brain, oh, that's the way the world works. Which one of these am I? Okay, but like those classifications are not real. They're just noises we make that we call words to describe a concept that is often motivated by the idea to say, I want to sleep with someone that's not my spouse and I don't want to feel bad about it. That's really what's going on, right? Like the reason men cheat is not because we are predisposed to spreading our seed. That'll make guys angry when they hear that. It's because it's emotionally validating to do it because it's hard. Most girls aren't letting you do it as easily. And so if you can feel good about yourself. Like the same as bench pressing 300 pounds. There's not many people that can do it. So if you, the more attractive of a girl you can sleep with is like the heavier of a weight you can lift and it makes you feel better about yourself. It's just an unhealthy way of getting there. Right. And if you recognize that, you can say, oh, what I'm really looking for is validation. What's my real problem? It's not that I need to go have an open relationship. Well, my point is that words control thought a lot of the time. So the word rich has come to mean it's unhealthy, it's greedy, you're trying to take from other people. You want all these people working in a sweatshop so you can sit at the top of the pyramid scheme, swimming in your vault of dollars like Scrooge McDuck. Okay, so we started saying wealthy. Well, now wealthy is starting to get the same thing. Okay, wealthy is like, oh, you've got yachts, you've got mansions on the beach. Why do you need a $15 million house when there's some poor kid in Indonesia that's sleeping in the streets? You should give all your wealth to him. And if the wealthy person says, well, why don't you give your wealth to him? Well, because I don't have it like you do, right? You have to give it because you've got the wealth, not me. Well, why don't you have the wealth? Well, because I don't do the things that that person did. Oh, right? Like, so it's easy for you to tell someone else to do it. I like what you said, Josh, like it's power and it's energy. Because that doesn't have the same negative connotation as wealth right now. The problem is in 10 years, it will. It'll just be like power is going to become a vice. Why do you're greedy? You're a dominating tyrant that you shouldn't want power. Nobody should have power. We should spread it amongst everybody evenly. But like the problem is if you had a sport where the basketball team forced everyone to take the same number of shots and get the same number of minutes, what would the NBA look like if we were like, it's not fair to white guys. They're not getting enough playing time. Every team has to have a proportionate number of white guys. And you know what? We're also disproportionately benefiting tall and fast people. You need short, fat, unathletic men on your basketball team. Like, what would the NBA turn into if we started putting all that regulation onto it? Right? Wow. That is what happens when you try to control output versus recognizing this person has a skill in this thing. Let's teach them to hone that skill. And then we get like beautiful athletes doing incredibly impressive things, which captivate us and make us want to pay attention to it. Because that's really what we're meant to do in life is we're all given different gifts by God. We're supposed to be developing them. And then when you're in your element of exercising that gift, other people want to see it. So the title, I called it Pillars of Wealth because that's currently the word we're using to describe success. Okay, like you can be wealthy with money, but you can also be wealthy with fitness. You can be wealthy with a personality. Some people are just fun to be around and some people are terrible to be around. I really believe these principles could be applied to any of the things that you're looking to be good at, but it's always like a 3-pillared approach. It's always a triangle. There's always like 3 angles you got to get right. And I actually, in the book, I talk about how a triangle is geometrically, like architecturally, the most solid, strong shape of all of them. Like in a lot of architecture, you'll see they use triangles to like split the weight out amongst 3 things. Yeah. If you think about riding a bicycle is much harder than a tricycle if you're just sitting still, right? A bar stool with 2 legs would fall. 3 is the minimum that you need to have some kind of stability.
Wow. David, excellent. Thank you so much. Pillars of Wealth. If you guys enjoyed this episode, you'll get a much deeper dive with his amazing book. David, I mean, we know where to find you. Where can our audience find you?
Thanks, man. They can check out davidgreen24.com. That's the website that I've got. I run a group called Spartan League, so they can go to spartanleague.com and check that out, or they can follow me on any social media they like at davidgreen24.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Damn straight. We just got
buddy.
We got to the end of another great show. And everyone listening right now, you're the family and friends. Thanks for staying till the end.
That was so fun. And hey, hit the like, hit subscribe. We're here to serve you guys. That's why we're doing this show. Josh is not paying me. I'm doing this off of my quote unquote sweat equity because we want to make a difference in your life. And then that ripple effect will continue to touch the world.
Hey, amen, brother. Please check us out on capitalhacking.com, all the social media threads. And yes, I know you've probably already sent this episode to one of your best friends. Thank you. We love you. Just go right into your iPhone, hit the plus symbol. We'll talk to you later. See you next week.
Share.